It's kind of interesting that you asked this question because I have been thinking a lot about it. Fairly recently, I actually gave a lecture about this topic at U of T for some of the composers in the composition program. And I think the general impression about the term new music is that we think it's music that's new, but in a sort of chronological sense. But actually, I really don't think this is the case. Rather, we should think about new music as being containing elements or things that are perhaps unfamiliar or strange or uncanny or even maybe challenging. And so the newness refers not to sort of the chronological the creation of music, but rather something inherent in the music itself. And when we do this, it causes the definition to be, I think, much more inclusive. So we begin to see new music as something that stretches all the way back to the beginning of musical history, and we begin to look at composers being that we would not expect to be new music composers are actually quite new. For example, the quintessential example is Beethoven being kind of the new music composer. He was constantly pushing against the forms. He turned sonata form into something that was not kind of a prearranged structure, but almost something psychological. So this kind of completely innovative and critical examination of what music can do. And so I think the thinking more about new music in this sort of fashion, rather than being kind of a question of chronology, it makes it a lot more engaging and interesting to think about.
I agree.
I think it's kind of funny because I really didn't start studying music seriously until I was a teenager. I think 15, maybe 14. So previous to that, I was really interested in doing something creative, but I was not really sure the correct the mode or the mode of creation that I would have pursued. I remember being quite young and being interested in drawing and painting, and also even writing plays, and also I remember even kind of making video games. And I didn't know anything about computer programming, so I would just kind of draw out the video games on these big, huge pieces of paper. So there was definitely kind of that drive to create something. And music didn't really become a part of it until quite later, and I started playing instruments, and eventually I ended up playing in an orchestra. I was an oboist. And when I got there and I was just kind of listening to the music, playing the music, that is kind of where I discovered something that was kind of for myself. And moving onward, I also sort of had a kind of a rock music career, songwriting career as well. But I think the reason why I was drawn to classical composition is that it was, I just kind of wanted to do things that were more complex, and I was attracted to the score writing process, being able to arrange everything really clearly, and so the idea of so much music being instrumental actually, I think, kind of appealed to me in a funny way, because you're able to kind of express emotions in a more, I don't want to say subtle, but I don't know, maybe if you know what I'm talking about, it's being more sort of a covert way of expressing things rather than writing songs and writing these kind of confessional lyrics and stuff like that. So I think that was kind of what drew me towards the genre. I was playing piano already, and I think by the time I was 5 or 6, there was a piano in my house, and I think what also drew me to music is that it's the reward is immediate, right? Mm-hmm. If you learn to draw, you have to think about materials and shading and proportion and perspective and all these things. But with writing music, you just have to sit down at the piano and hit notes, right? And so the gratitude is sort of instant. So I think that's kind of what made it the most appealing when I was younger.
Cool.
Sure. Yeah, so like a lot of composers, most of my income doesn't come from composition. So over the last 10 years or so, I've been making quite a bit of my income from being a church musician, being an organist, choir director, and also kind of doing a little bit of teaching. But I always make sure that I have time to compose. Typically 1 or 2 hours, and it's almost always the first thing in the morning. And then the rest of the day is dedicated to the other things that I have to do with my life. I'm always very cautious about the work I take on, because I really feel that whatever I'm doing sort of outside of composition has to somehow benefit that part of my life. And so I no matter what I'm doing, composition is always sort of the highest priority in my life. Sometimes it's really hard to kind of make it that way, but it's and being the other job I have, mainly being an organist and a choir director, is that directly feeds into what I do as a composer, which is really nice. So I guess I'm pretty lucky. I think for me, the best comments I get from people about my music is that they feel that the music has somehow given them something, that has somehow added to them in some way. And, if you kind of strip down the concert experience down to its very core, what you're witnessing in a concert is sort of an exchange of information. The composer composes something, we receive that information in musical form, and if the music is good, if the performance is good, then that information sort of adds to you. If the music is bad, if the performance is bad, it in my case at least, it sort of sucks energy out of me, sort of like a vampire or something. So so the best comments I always get from people is when they feel like that my music has contributed somehow to them. And it doesn't have to be in kind of an obvious way. It could be sort of mysterious way. Maybe they've learned something about themselves, or they learned something about the world or the universe, or so it's sort of kind of undefined. But I think that's kind of, over the years, that's been my impression, what stood out the most for me. I participated in the Array Young Composers Workshop, and after the concert, I had somebody come up to me and they said my music was so strange and beautiful, which is I thought was a really nice comment. Funny enough, I don't really compose music like that anymore, but so I don't know if that sort of applies to what I'm writing today, but I thought that was really sort of gratifying comment. Well, when I was young, I had kind of I had something on my bucket list, which was to have a piece performed by an orchestra. And funny enough, I had that crossed off my bucket list quite early. By the time I was 16, that was already off my bucket list. But 2018, I was composer in residence for the University of Toronto Symphony Orchestra. And I wrote this fairly lengthy, unconventional kind of piece that needed 4 percussionists and a harpist and a pianist and 2 piccolo players, and so I really kind of went all out with this piece. And just sort of by stroke of luck, this was a retirement concert for one of the choral professors at U of T, and so the auditorium was absolutely packed. It was, I think, maybe 700, 800 people there. And when my piece was being played, I sort of snuck into the audience, and I sat in one of the last seats that was remaining. And my piece started playing, and this lady and this man, they started talking very loudly during the opening of my piece. They're like, "Oh, this music is awful," and I thought that was the most amazing thing I've ever experienced as a composer. Just somebody, they think your music is just a racket, and one of my mentors, Norbert Palej, said he had a kind of a similar experience, and he said it was the greatest experience of his life. He had some people say say to them, "Oh, this music is awful," and in the same concert, people are like, "This music is beautiful and moving," and all these things. So these extremely polarizing reactions. So for me, that always kind of stands out as the most, one of the most important creative experiences. Funny enough.
Yeah.